Hey folks, it's Greg and Janet. Today we are in Terrell, Texas, and we are at the #1 British Flying Training Museum. This area here, or this training school, actually was in business from 1941 to 1945, and they trained over 2,200 British pilots for World War II, right here in Texas. I had never heard that before. So we're gonna go inside and check it out and see just what in the heck we were doing back then. Okay gang, here is a Texas Historical Commission marker of the #1 British Flying Training School. You can pause this if you'd like to read it. I'll read a little bit of it, I guess. By 1939, the British government recognized that in the event of war with Germany, training facilities would need to be established overseas, in Commonwealth countries or in the U.S. at civilian schools similar to those already utilized by then U.S. Army Air Corps. In August of 1941, prior to the U.S. entry into World War II, the #1 British Training School of the Royal Air Force was established with strong support from citizenry of Terrell. And it goes on basically to tell a little bit more about the school and its operations. It does say they trained approximately 2,200 cadets. Cool, I did not know that. We're inside the museum. The first thing that we did is we watched about a 10-minute long film about the school itself. They ran a 6-month program for British people that came over here to learn to fly and ended up going into World War II. And several of them died here. At first, when they would come over here, they would wear civilian clothes as not to alert the civilians here that something was up. And then once they officially entered the war, they started wearing their military blues on the streets of Terrell.
Yeah, after Pearl Harbor.
Yes.
Because then we were in the war too, and they were allies, so it was cool to wear the uniforms.
Yeah.
So that's great.
And from what we understand, a lot of the locals here really didn't like foreigners coming over here to the United States at the time, but once they came over here and started training, they became family. And this is a display of the Battle of Britain, July 10th, 1940 to October 31st, 1940. And we knew nothing about this museum until we actually found it online. Here is a certificate of proficiency which the pilots would earn while here at school. And apparently this is one of the trainers that they would fly. A model of it anyway, sorry. Yes, the British people were very, very small back then. About the size, about 30% larger than a Ken and Barbie doll. And there's actually a cemetery here where some of the pilots that were training here who perished before finishing school are buried, which we'll go visit.
Started off with 20 weeks of school, and then it went to 28 weeks after the Pearl Harbor incident. But there's some pretty sad stories of how some of the pilots did perish.
Yes. Here's some pictures of downtown Terrell, Texas at the time, in the 1941 to 1945.
They only had 10,500 people back then.
Mm-hmm. And this is a model of the train that would bring the trainees in for flight school. and a diagram of the downtown area where the train would come in. They actually trained, I believe, 124 U.S. civilians to fly also at the school. And from what I understand, the British soldiers loved Terrell, Texas. They loved the hospitality they got here and became very friendly with the townsfolk. There's a picture of some of the trainers flying over the train here in Terrell.
Major W.F. Long was the guy that operated the training school, and he moved to Texas when he was 17, but he's the one that ran this whole operation.
Here's a model of the field here at the training facility, the airport. In the film that we saw, it was there was a portion in there about a British pilot who had, or a trainee, who had become very friendly with a family here in Terrell, and he perished on the night before he was going to graduate while flying at night. There was a bad storm and his radio went out and he couldn't find his way back to the fields to land. So he just flew around in the sky until he ran out of fuel and eventually crashed. Moore Avenue, that's now Highway 80.
Look at the barracks, all the barracks.
Yeah.
This is inside, the bunks. Like sardines almost.
Yeah. Cadets get a big Texas howdy from Major Long. Cadets at a party in a Terrell home. And there was numerous cadets that went on to win medals in World War II. One of them won the Victoria Medal, which I guess is the highest honor for the British Air Force. The Royal Air Force, yeah, it used to be the Royal Air Force, yeah.
And you see that their patch there? Now there's a few of the U.S. pilots that actually got to wear that and the U.S. patch.
Really?
Because they, yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, this is the gentleman that perished the night before he was to graduate when his radio lost signal. You know, it appears these men were all pretty much between the age of 19 and 23. Yes, this is William Ibbs. He was the one that was in the video. Had a lot of actual footage of him smiling, having fun with families here in Terrell. And here's a flight trainer that they would use. That's amazing. I guess that was the 1940s version of a bull.
Oh,
yeah.
There you go.
Like a ghillies. Bull riding almost. That's amazing. I would never have guessed they would have a simulator back then. This is a map of what, Denmark, Oklahoma, Texas. Oh, I see what they did.
They're making,
yeah, they're making Texas and Oklahoma look like
Ireland.
Yes, like the entire world.
You know, like where Ireland would be compared to Amsterdam, but actually that would be like Texarkana and Oklahoma, but that would be the actual distance. So they had this to simulate their country in order so they could get their bearings when they're flying, they had to like pretend they were over there, but they were in Texas and Oklahoma.
Learning to use instruments.
Yes. And so, you know, this is supposed to be England, that's supposed to be Ireland, but actually that's Oklahoma and Fort Worth, you know. So it gives them an idea how far something actually is and the direction. So they had this done up to coincide with their country.
That's
which
cool.
is a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different instruments that they used. Signal lamp. There's a lot of neat stuff in here, isn't there?
Yeah.
So you would start off at this end when you first came to the school, apparently.
Yeah.
And this would be your first flight instructors for courses 1 through 7, which I'm assuming would be first week to the 7th week. And then you'd move to 8 to 11 weeks.
Yeah. They said they started off with the mechanics of the airplane and that type of thing, and you know, your actual plane itself, what it's made of, and you know, and then they went to the next step, you know, like instruments, and then, you know, so it's all, they had it all planned out.
Yeah, this would be 12 to 15 weeks here. And then 16 to 18 weeks. 19 to 21 weeks. And then finally 22 to 27 weeks.
All right, you see the U.S. Air Force wings and the Royal Air Force wings. Richard Hill was allowed to wear both because he did both.
Cool. Some photographs of the different planes that were used here, I'm assuming. Paintings, they're not actually photographs, it looks like. And here's the graduation photos.
A lot of men.
Yes. And they have a registry here where you can look up each individual cadet. If you know somebody who had a family member that went to this school or heard about somebody here, you can actually look them up and find out which photo they're on. Every military museum I've ever been to has model planes. Every single one of them.
All right.
Women's Air Force service pilots. I had no idea there was women pilots in World War II. That's bad that I don't know that. I'm sorry. And it appears we have a wing above us. Or is that a propeller? A prop? It may be.
Looks like a wing.
It's too narrow to be a wing, isn't it?
I don't know. Maybe biplanes, I don't know.
Wow.
It's neat.
This is their Vietnam display.
Yes. Wow.
Okay. You know, that may be a helicopter propeller, Jan. Bet it is.
Yeah, you might be
Yeah,
right.
that is a helicopter propeller up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, this would be one from the tail.
There, it says right there, U.S. Army.
Huey. Yeah, Huey blade. This would be one from the tail section.
Audie Murphy.
This is an Audie Murphy display, the most decorated soldier ever. He was born here in Texas, and the town of Murphy, Texas is named after him. He went on to also become a movie star. It's an aircraft engine from one of the planes that was used here. Tools that they would use to fix these weapons of military. 300 horsepower engine used in one of the planes. And this is some of the guns and munitions used in World War II. Alright guys, this gun right here is a Carcano. It's the same exact weapon that was supposedly used to kill President Kennedy. And the gentleman that donated this to the museum, when they were doing test firings at Dealey Plaza to see if they could duplicate the shots, they borrowed this gun to use for the testing. So this,
that's amazing. Thank you.
So this is a very, very historic gun. Yeah, look at this machine gun, guys. It's been demilitarized, but it appears to be a British machine gun. I can't get over that being the actual same weapon that was supposedly used by Lee Harvey Oswald. Right. Here's a display on the Tuskegee Airmen. Very historic group of men. It looks like these are structures of planes, or parts of planes, showing how the wings were made. So they were wood covered with metal.
Wow.
At least parts of them were. Here's an AT-6 wing, the skeleton of it. And perhaps the most famous war picture ever taken, the end of the war. Those two people did not know each other. He just grabbed her on the street in Times Square, I believe. And they reunited them. Oh goodness, it was like 40 years after that photo was taken. They were able to track down the two people, and that was the only time that they had ever had any contact, was that kiss, and a cameraman was on hand to take the photo. And the world's heaviest binoculars. Those are Japanese naval binoculars. Look at that. It'd take two people to hold that. This gentleman right here, Major Charlie H. Holton, was the commander of this B-29. And this B-29 flew 1 hour in front of the Enola Gay. And it would drop leaflets over towns warning Japan that there was a major destructive bomb that was getting ready to be dropped. Nuclear bomb, atomic bomb. And they had 1 hour to try to find cover. And then the Enola Gay came over and would release the bomb. Very interesting. This is Francis G.H. Ted Sherman. He was put in charge of closing and liquidating this flight school after the war was over with. Here he is later in life. He was from Britain, but he settled here in the United States. This was him at his home in Ohio and at one of the reunions of the flight school. And these were his keys to the buildings and the yards here at the flight school. These are the original keys, and he was the final person to lock the doors on the gates of the flight school. And we'll probably drive right by there and show you the gates. They are still the original gates back from 1945. All right, hope the wind noise is going to be bad. Sorry guys. It appears these gates here were the gates to the entrance to the camp at the flight school here. And these would be the gates that Ted Sherman locked for the last time in 1945. And at least that's what they're telling us over there. This appears to be the site. It does have some really old electronics boxes here, and these are heavy duty steel posts, so it probably was. I just can't believe that museum. I can't believe they had an actual Mannlicher Carcano, and it was the actual one that was used in the reenactment of the Kennedy assassination. So amazing. Now, I don't have any real thoughts as to whether Lee Harvey Oswald shot Kennedy or was involved. I really don't know. There's so many theories, and it seems like every single theory has somewhere along the line where it breaks down. So hopefully one day we'll get the answers on that, but who knows. All right, we're gonna head over to the cemetery. All right guys, this is the entrance to the Oakland Memorial Cemetery, where a lot of the cadets are buried from the British I flight school. We're gonna go in and see if we can find them. This ground dedicated to the Royal Air Force by the Oakland Memorial Park Association and cared for by the Terrell War Relief Society. Some corner of a foreign field that is forever England. They do have a British flag flying. And this is the grave sites of the men who perished while learning to fly at the British I Royal Flight School. It's really a beautiful little section they have here for them. Very somber.
They were so young. I'm just amazed that they were all like 19, 20, 21, you know. 24 is the oldest I saw. I think like one of them.
One of the things I wanted to mention was when we were at the museum, the curator that was there, Mr. Taylor, he told us that here in the town of Terrell, back at that time during World War II, there was a drugstore called Bass Drugs, which I believe is still here, and they had a soda fountain inside of there, and all of the young men liked to hang out there because that's where all the girls hung out, at the soda fountain. But the men at the flying school were not allowed to leave camp after dark. So the military school built an annex onto the school and duplicated the soda fountain that was in the drugstore, so that the recruits, or the trainees, would have a place to go and have a good time, and it would remind them of the local drugstore. So that's kind of cool, I think.
Strange RV tours will take you places with Greg and Janet's smiling faces. You might see a crazy flavored soda review, or some tips to fix your RV too. So come along, won't you join us, friend, as we discover what's around the bend. Just sit right back in your easy chair. Strange RV Tours is on the air. Strange RV Tours is on